The United States has provoked a war with Iran that is not capable of winning. It lacks the supply chain. It lacks the military capability. Iran, by virtue of its investment in ballistic missiles and in shelters that are built to withstand nuclear attacks, has positioned itself in a way that now, by controlling the Strait of Hormuz, it controls the world economy. And at some point, the United States and the rest of the world, they're going to have to come to an agreement with Iran, respect Iran's sovereignty, restore Iran's position in the world economy, and seek peace as opposed to war.
Hello and welcome to the Deep Dive Perspective. I've got the honor of welcoming Larry C. Johnson, former CIA analyst, and these days very much somebody who is in demand for his analysis of what's going on geopolitically, especially in West Asia. And today we're delighted to be able to get his view on what the latest updates of what's happening in West Asia. You know, it does seem as though everybody's hell-bent on a world war because, Larry, give me your overview, because the latest developments, of course, include Saudi Arabia hitting Yemen's Sana'a airport. The exchange of fire on the Hormuz is continuing. What's your overview?
Yeah, it's getting more dangerous by the day. And Saudi Arabia, I think, seems intent on committing suicide. You know, there are lots of rumors floating about regarding the personal lifestyle of Mohammed bin Salman. Not exactly the kind of thing that would be suitable for discussion in a family environment. But instead of following through with the attempts to reconcile with the Houthis, he's decided to double down, attack. And the Houthis are in a position now, they can shut down Yambu. All they got to do is put about 4 missiles in there. Yambu is then turned off. So then Saudis are completely cut off from being able to ship oil out. Yambu has been their last stretch. The Houthis also can shut down the al-Mandab in the Red Sea, that one strait, and that is going to impose further damage to the global economy. Then we move back over to the Persian Gulf, Strait of Hormuz. The United States is just, it's completely out of control. Donald Trump is living in a delusional world. They claim that the Strait of Hormuz is open. It is not open. It is open only for those ships that are going to follow the protocols established by the government of Iran through the Persian Gulf Strait Authority. Those protocols stipulate that if you're going to come through this strait, you must submit to Iran. Ship's captain, name of the ship, ownership of the ship, destination of the ship, the cargo that's on board, and nationalities of the crewmen on board. And this is all about Iran preventing any shipments in the future from going to Israel or anybody connected with Israel. That's, it's a de facto embargo on Israel. And Iran is dead serious about enforcing that. Well, the United States can protest all at once, but it can't do anything to stop Iran from taking control of the Strait of Hormuz. Go ahead.
Larry, the idea that Iran could be tamed in terms of its nuclear development, there was that objective that Donald Trump set out with. I'm going to shut down Iran's capability of making nuclear weapons, even though Iran clearly didn't seem to have that capability. But recently, I think there's been some rumors as well that Iran actually is capable and has made weapons. So whether Trump manages to open the Hormuz or not, do you think Iran has that nuclear capacity and capability? Because that would be a game changer.
Yeah. Oh, no, they absolutely have it. They've got the engineering background to do it. They've got the ballistic missiles to carry such a device. So, that's not the problem. In the past, it was a religious prohibition. The fatwa that was issued by Ali Khamenei, the previous Ayatollah, because he said it was haram to build such a weapon that would kill innocents was considered a sin against God. So, but there's been growing sentiment in Iran that you basically say, "Hey, we're being played for suckers. We're trying to abide by these rules, and we keep getting attacked." They've had two surprise attacks out of the blue with the full U.S. support last June, and then on February 28th of this year. And then, despite having an MOU in place, despite the U.S. agreement that would not launch further combat operations on Iran, that's exactly what the United States has been doing now over the past week. And Iran's retaliating and retaliating effectively. And the United States doesn't have any really good options. It was already in the process of starting to draw down its military forces in the region. So now its options are to hit the brakes and do a reverse and start putting more assets back into the Middle East, and that will then become targets. Because as we've seen already this week, the air bases in Jordan, the Mawafaq al-Salti Air Base and the Prince Hassan Air Base, both have been hit. Both have suffered damage. And if the U.S. tries to go there, the U.S. is going to be in harm's way. So there aren't really any good options. The United States does not have a good military option for a ground invasion. If it were to attempt something like try to take Karg Island, Iran's made clear what happened. Hey, we'll let you take it, and then we're going to bomb the hell out of you, which is exactly what will happen, and the U.S. will lose hundreds, if not thousands, of soldiers or Marines. So this is, unfortunately, I was hopeful that this latest round would follow the pattern we've seen since April, where there would be attacks on Friday, Saturday, sometimes going into Sunday. Then Trump would come out and make some sort of conciliatory statement or claim that all the negotiations are back on track or Iran is talking, so that before the stock market opened, it would drive the stock market up and the price of oil down. Well, today, it didn't really affect the stock market one way or the other. It was up a little bit. In fact, let me just out of curiosity here, see where we're at. It's down. So it's down across the board. The Dow, the Nasdaq, S&P 500. But the price of oil is going up, and that's the key. That this has raised concerns, or legitimate concerns, that there is now an oil crisis. May not be evident to people, but it is a crisis with respect to diesel and aviation fuel. Those now this week going forward are going to be going up, and they're going to be going up dramatically.
Well, the picture you've painted, if I add up the two things, if I add up the economic detonation that's going on, the global economic detonation, and then if I add your absolute, statement about the nuclear weapon, the capability, by provoking Iran even further, by bombing Iran, by attacking it on all fronts, that's kind of, in a way, self-defeating as well, because you're pushing them to take the fatwa away. And then that would mean that Iran would say, well, we have to have a nuclear deterrent because there's nothing else to stop these guys. So this is kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way. And it's almost like you have to ask the question, who's Donald Trump working for? Because this is not in the interests of the American public or the rest of the world. Yet he's still heading down this path of trying to push some sort of regional or even global Armageddon.
Well, but he's being fed a narrative from Israel and has largely believed that narrative, that the Islamic Republic is widely unpopular. A lie that was exposed during the course of the multiple funeral events surrounding the burial of the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei last week. Estimated 40 to 45 million Iranians turned out. And the West says, oh, that's a lie. They were forced out. They were coerced. That's all crap. This was a dramatic display that the government of Iran one of the consequences of America's attack on the 28th is to have built and expanded support for the Islamic Republic. It hasn't diminished it; it's expanded it. And so they now realize they're in a war with the West, and they are at the same time strengthening their ties with China, with Russia, and with Pakistan. And Pakistan's the interesting player here because Osman Munir has been playing a leading role in trying to promote a peaceful settlement, a negotiated settlement. I know that they were initially anticipating they'd have talks last Saturday, the 11th. That didn't pan out. Now they're claiming, oh, it'll be this Saturday, the 18th. I don't think that's going to happen either. I think actually I think the peace process is now dead. Iran's not going to come back asking the United States for meetings. It's going to be up to the United States and the West to ask for the meetings. And the shortage of, it's not just the shortage of oil, it's a shortage of LNG, it's a shortage of helium, shortage of urea and sulfur. Each of those commodities, if you will, have a direct, and their absence from the world market has a harmful effect on the global economy, and particularly on certain economies. I think most people don't realize that the helium is not mined separately. Helium is usually found in these liquid natural gas fields and has to be specially processed. And unlike natural gas or oil, helium is very difficult to store. It requires, some supercooling. But when you bring out LNG from the ground, then that's where you get the helium. Well, previously, Qatar was providing about 40% of the world's helium. Great business, making lots of money off of it. That helium is a critical ingredient if you're going to make computer chips.
Right.
Well, guess what? 40% of the world's helium is gone. That means you've got not making as many computer chips as before. And what does that do? When you've got fewer computer chips, but you've got a demand both from the consumer electronics side as well as from the AI side, because all those data centers they're building have to be filled with computers that are filled with computer chips. So those prices now are skyrocketing. Apple, for example, announced that its top-level phone and the MacBook Pro would go up $200 for the phone and $300 for the MacBook. So that has an inflationary effect around the globe.
Militarily speaking, you're a man who understands military matters. How does it work within the US system? You've got the Pentagon, you've got the White House, and then, of course, there's the CIA and all the intelligence agencies. Is there a check and balance on Donald Trump and the kind of decisions he's making? Because, as we've kind of concluded, this is pretty crazy where he's going with this. And there's no scenario which doesn't look really bad other than the US withdrawing and backing off and coming to some sort of terms with Iran. Right. So how does it work within the US establishment? Is there a way of creating checks and balances on the president and trying to redirect him? Or are these lobbies, we always hear about these Zionist lobbies or the IPAC lobbies, or are they just far more powerful than the infrastructure within the US system?
Yes. So let me clarify. In theory, the Congress is the counterweight to the president. The president cannot declare war and start, according to the Constitution, start attacking other countries. But that's exactly what Donald Trump did. So what should have happened is the Congress should impeach him. Congress will not. They are too, as you said, bought up by these lobbies, particularly the ones connected to Israel, the AIPAC. And so they are not about to object to that. So effectively, there is no check or balance on it. The potential for checks and balance exists. It's built into the structure. But if you don't use it, then it's useless. So the decision not to use what's there is the problem. Now, no matter what Trump how fervently he wants to pursue this war, he is going to come up against the economic realities. And those realities are going to be significant spikes in the price of diesel and aviation fuel, perhaps even shortages, which then really creates a crisis situation. The Trump administration has tried to mitigate this by releasing drawing down the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. There are, I'm going to simplify this, there are two basic classes of oil, sweet and sour. And, when I talk about sweet and sour, people think I'm ordering off a Chinese menu. Yes, I'll have the sweet and sour chicken.
Yeah.
No, so the sweet oil, basically, it's low in sulfur. United States produces an abundance of that. It has a surplus. It's the sour that has the high sulfur content that's the issue. Because the U.S. refineries are built to handle the sour crude. 70% of the refineries are built to handle sour crude. And these refineries, in terms of the actual engineering that goes into them, you can't just substitute sweet for sour or vice versa. The refineries, they're built, it's sort of like if you're getting a handmade pair of boots, they're going to build that boot to fit your feet, not the feet of your cousin or your sister. And in this case, the refineries are built specifically to handle sweet crude or sour crude. Now, the sweet crude presents more challenges in trying to produce diesel and aviation fuel from it. You can do that,
right?
But it ends up being far more costly. Now, so the problem on the sour crude side is the United States has been and is continuing to be dependent on the import of foreign oil.
I see.
Now that sour crude comes from Canada, Mexico, Venezuela now, but it also came from the Persian Gulf and from Russia. Well, the United States has stopped trading with Russia, wiped that off the board, and now you've had a shutdown in the Persian Gulf. And people need to understand why the effect was not immediate. When the IRGC closed the Persian Gulf on the 28th of February, there were ships that had just left the Gulf loaded with oil. They were headed to the United States.
Right.
So it took them about 40 days to get there. That takes you to mid-April. So it wasn't really till mid-April when, what happened then? Oh, yes, the ceasefire was signed. Sayed, do you think that's just a coincidence that the timing of the signing of the ceasefire between Iran and the United States coincided on the last days that the U.S. got a shipment of the sour crude they so desperately need? I don't think so. And in fact, the United States had anticipated this problem, which is why on the 11th of March, the Secretary of Energy ordered the drawdown from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve of 1.4 million barrels per day. Well, their capacity to continue that has lasted for about 120 days. That's ended over the weekend. Going forward, the United States has very limited capability to draw from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which means the United States is now going to be short of the sour crude it needs to make diesel and aviation fuel. And this diesel shortage is global, as is the aviation fuel shortage. Global. It's not restricted to the United States. So this is a real problem for the global economy, and why the U.S. continuing attacks on Iran is going to shut down the Gulf, make it even more difficult for that essential sour crude to get out to the world market.
Yeah, this is not something I've heard before, so I really appreciate your insights on this. And if I add to it the other cataclysmic reality, which is that fertilizer also largely came out of that Hormuz region, and that hasn't kicked in. The fact that hasn't been getting to its suppliers because the next cycle of planting the various crops, etc., hasn't necessarily hit. But when that hits and they don't have the fertilizer, is this a double whammy on top of what you've talked about with the fuel?
Yeah, so you got to look at it hemisphere by hemisphere. So the planting in the northern hemisphere has already taken place.
Right.
They did have a boost in the price of fertilizer up front because of what happened on the 28th of February. It is the folks down below the equator. They're now in the middle of winter, but they're going to be coming into spring. Their spring planting season, I think, starts end of August, 1st of September. And there the shortage of fertilizer kicks in because fertilizer is created out of both the sulfur from the oil and the urea, the nitrogen. So the combination of urea and nitrogen made the Persian Gulf a source of about 30 to 35% of the world's supply of fertilizer. So yeah, that's gone as well. So now these the fertilizer shortage around the world is going to potentially cause a crisis in the production of food and potentially even famine, hunger, lack of food, at least in certain areas of the world. So this is, we haven't really experienced the full consequences of what this shutdown means.
Larry, I remember COVID, and what you're talking about has kind of a much worse air about it than what happened at COVID. But I remember here in the supermarkets and even in the US, when the supply chains were disturbed, only slightly disturbed, you found people fighting in the aisles for toilet roll. This is something that's recorded. What on earth's going to happen if all of what we just outlined, what you've outlined, happens? How do you see it affecting the ordinary person in the streets, say 6 months down the line or a year down the line, if it continues on the trajectory we're seeing, this war?
This will be an inflationary spike primarily. There's a variety of causes of inflation. If a government prints too many dollars, this is what happened in Argentina back in the early 1980s. They kept printing money as if it was a free commodity, and so when you get more dollars or more pesos at that time chasing a fixed amount of goods, then the people that control those fixed amount of goods can charge more and more. So the excess of dollars can create an inflationary pressure. But then you've got what happens when there's an actual genuine shortage. You haven't printed more dollars, but all of a sudden you got 20%, 25% less diesel on the market. Well, the competition for that's going to take place, and the price is going to go up. The same for fertilizer, for food. So when you get a supply disruption, that's also another, and that's what I'd call a more serious and dangerous economic spike, because those supply chain shortages can't be easily rectified. And that is, that's where the United States and Donald Trump right now is playing with fire. They think they can coerce Iran into opening the Strait of Hormuz. They cannot. The United States does not have the military power to do so, and they will learn that at their own peril as they try to do that, and they will suffer significant losses and potentially losses of life.
Well, two things come from what you've said there, but I'll ask the first question, the obvious one. How many boots on the ground do the American forces have in West Asia to mobilize against the million-strong Iranian military force? And of course, there's 36 million others that seem to have signed up to say they're ready to fight for Iran. That's number one. And, the Navy itself and the Air Force, I can't remember any battle or war being won simply with naval and Air Force power. There has to be a ground equation. Is there any chance that America would be able to involve itself in that with its own boots on the ground? But then it also has this allegation that ISIS and a lot of other regional proxy forces might be their go-to option rather than coming in themselves. Do you buy that? Is there a possibility of insurgencies and regional people that don't like Iran that might rally around for the Americans?
Well, there's no doubt that the U.S. in the past has used these radical Islamists like ISIS, al-Nusra, to carry out attacks in other countries. can go back and look at the Chechen War in Russia, the Second Chechen War. Again, financed and enabled by the United States with foreign jihadists. So yeah, that can happen. The problem is the United States. Number one, the United States lacks the numbers in terms of forces. I think right now between the U.S. Army and the Marine Corps, it can count on a total of 660,000 soldiers,
Right.
Active duty. Well, hell, Russia right now has 1.5 million active duty alone, more than double what the United States has. So for the United States to build up that force, one, it's going to be very expensive. Two, it's going to take probably 2 years. So a ground option, is it possible someone may make this stupid decision and say, okay, we're going to try to take and capture Karg Island? Good. Go for it. They'll get U.S. troops on Karg Island right now in the middle of the summer. It's absolutely madness. It's pizza oven hot. And the troops on the ground need water to survive. How are they going to be resupplied? And I've not even dealt with the issue, how the hell do you get the troops on the island in the first place? They're certainly not going to land by boat through an amphibious operation. That means they got to be brought in through planes to parachute them or land them and have them pile out the back. Again, that means you're going to put 1,000 troops let's say you're going to put 2,000 troops. That means depending on the type of aircraft, you're going to need at least 20 different aircrafts to do that. And then, so it's madness. It doesn't work. But I can't rule out that somebody under Pete Hegseth or Pete Hegseth himself will decide, oh, we're going to do it without thinking through the logistics requirements as well as what it means, how easy it will be for Iran to defend. Once you have a force that's isolated, you can then saturate them with drones, with short-range ballistic missiles, even artillery. From that distance offshore, they'll be liable for artillery strikes as well.
Well, the US forces must have learned some lessons in Iraq because they did come up against some Shia forces in that region, particularly Basra, I think. There were lots of experiences where they realized that the men who are fighting, particularly from the Iranian or Iraqi-style Shia military units, they do tend to go all the way. And martyrdom is clearly part of their ideological and spiritual and religious yearning. That makes for a very, very tough opposition. And given that they've also got drone power, they've got a lot of the modern sophisticated weaponry to be able to take on any ground force. Does it seem as though the US would probably prefer the idea of what they did in Syria? I mean, that slow attritional warfare which squeezes the life out of Iran. But then is Iran Syria? They're two different scenarios. What's your take on that long, kind of slow effort to strangle Iran via its economy and all the other means that they've got at their disposal?
Well, in the last 3 weeks, Iran has made $7 billion off of its oil exports, minimum $7 billion. Of course, it's being sold in Chinese yuan and put in Chinese, and being handled through Chinese banks. So the United States doesn't even have a chance to interfere with that income. Iran's borders with Russia are wide open, going through the Caspian Sea. Its borders with China and Pakistan are open. China through the rail line that goes east-west, even though it was damaged. The Iranian engineers have quickly rebuilt what was blown up and attempted to be destroyed. Pakistan, they can handle container ships and overland shipments. So actually, Iran's in a much better shape economically now than it has been, say, 3 years ago. So the West's hope of strangling it is just going to turn out to be a fool's dream. And the people like Scott Messent, they're divorced from reality. But you tell them that, and they're such arrogant pricks that you don't know what you're talking about. We know it all. Okay, smart guys.
Yeah.
Play it out. Let's see what happens.
So I have to ask the question. I mean, Russia clearly is engaged with NATO and Ukraine, and of course their military forces, and their attention is largely over there. So the old days, you'd have seen that, in the Soviet era, you'd have seen support. You'd have been seen. I'm pretty sure there would have been a backup for Iran to say we'll back them because they're against Anglo-American or Anglo-Zionist imperialism. Putin, I don't think, has that sort of policy. And then, secondly, China.
Let me
correct.
Let me correct you on that.
Okay.
China, Russia signed a joint security treaty with Iran on the 28th of January. Okay, so they already have a treaty in place amongst the three that involves support to Iran when faced with this kind of aggression.
So they can't openly do it. Would you think that China will supply, for instance, satellite information? There were rumors that they provided coordinates, and that even Pakistan's military was also involved in supporting Iran in preventing these assassinations. So do you think there's a covert hand already supporting Iran there?
Yeah, it's not covert. I think it's overt. So both, Iran has received intelligence support, material support with respect to air defense systems and offensive missiles, a whole variety of backup, not to mention financial support. So, this is, Iran is not standing alone. That's the key.
Right. And Trump knows this. Presumably the intelligence services know that this is happening. And so what's the American attitude towards China and Russia, et cetera, in this regard, given, as you say, they are supporting their enemy here? Is there anything Trump can do about that? Or is that an opportunity or possibility of an extended global war just there if they continue this support and continue making Iran strong enough to resist America?
Yeah, I think the United States is just out of they're ignoring. They don't, once you've locked yourself into a narrative, and you want to believe that narrative is true, you ignore the contradictory information or the information that would undermine that narrative. And you do that to a point, and you keep doing it to a point until events actually overwhelm you and you can't ignore it anymore.
And with Iran, would you say that Iran is capable of a sort of attritional war, more capable than America, given it's their patch? I mean, they can fire missiles, presumably, into the Hormuz willy-nilly, at will. They've got plenty of them. Whereas for the US, clearly there's been a huge expense in terms of firing these missiles. They're awfully expensive. And also, Scott Ritter was on the show saying that we simply can't produce these kinds of missiles overnight, that they kind of supplies are depleted, and they actually are struggling to maintain a long-term war. Do you agree with that?
Who's struggling?
Sorry, the Americans. The Americans.
Well, yeah. There's just there's some basic logistic facts that have to be taken into account. They've exhausted the supply of PAC-3 missiles that are fired by the Patriot. Ignore for a moment the fact that the Patriot is not an effective air defense system. Ted Postal has documented, at least against ballistic missiles. Ted Postal documented that about 2 weeks ago in a discussion with Danny Davis. But whether you're talking Tomahawk missile, JASSM, which is a joint air strike to surface missile that's fired from a plane. It's, again, another cruise missile. So you got the Tomahawks, the JASSMs, the ATACMS, the HIMARS. All of those are in the numbers have been depleted, and to produce more of them, you need rare earth minerals that China has now cut off.
Right.
So from a supply chain standpoint, the United States cannot reproduce these missiles in any quantity.
let's turn to Israel. I can't ignore Israel. I can't ignore the Gulf Arabs, where we began the conversation, in fact, and that will hopefully lead us towards our conclusion in the show. But Israel is the one with the existential crisis here, isn't it? I mean, America is not in an existential crisis if it pulls out of the Hormuz, does a deal with Iran, and has trade going on with Iran and starts creating good relations. It could actually potentially prosper and benefit. I dare say the American citizens could prosper and benefit. But Israel needs the war. Many would argue that Israel can't do with Iran, a powerful Iran with a knowledge economy and with a sort of a growing power intellectually, materially, and otherwise. It would lose its erstwhile dominance over West Asia. So it's Israel that actually needs America to fight this war. So is Trump fighting a war for Israel here primarily?
Well, yes, short answer. And it is not turning out well for America, and it's not turning out well for Israel. Israel has become a pariah state. I'm even, if you would have asked me 5 years ago, I would have actually been speaking up on behalf of Israel, suggesting that it was a victim. No longer. Israel is the victimizer. Israel is the genocider. Israel is a cancer upon the global political system. And it is, we've over the weekend we got even more evidence to support that with what was done to Congressman Ro Kahana, who was visiting Palestinians and documenting the abuses, and the Israeli settlers attacked him, and the Israeli Defense Forces allowed it to go on. He wasn't physically assaulted, but it would be an assault under any Western standard of justice. So, Israel, the United States, the only good news is Trump's unwavering support for Israel is destroying Israel's standing in the United States. More and more people, they're coming to believe, like I do, that we need to distance ourselves from Israel. Israel should be cut loose. And, this goes all the way back to when they attacked U.S. sailors on the USS Liberty back in 1967. I think this relationship with Israel, in my view, should be terminated.
So the neighbors of Iran have already tasted a little bit of what the costs are for taking on Iran. That took the US, I think, by surprise, because in the Ramadan war, when Iran went for the United States bases and hit pretty much all of them, as far as I'm concerned, and they're still hitting them, that is all on the regional allies of America and their soil. And it seems that when Israel was attacked by Iran, there was a lot of support, even fads, it was said, were going to be brought in from South Korea, and there was a real effort to protect the Iron Dome systems and the Arrow systems, etc. David Sling, I hear all sorts of names about the mechanisms. Most of them seem to fail in front of the hypersonic missiles Iran fired. But the missiles which were being fired at the likes of Kuwait and Qatar and UAE and Bahrain, well, they've been hitting their targets pretty much willy-nilly. So do you think the regional Arabs have kind of clocked now that actually paying trillions of dollars for security to the US is a kind of a little bit of a waste of time?
Well, if you're a owner of a pizza store, mafia comes in and tells you, "Hey, you got to pay me a little something every month in order to make sure that you got some insurance and nothing bad happens to your business." So you pay that fee, and guess what? Your business catches on fire. You go to the mafia and go, "Well, hey, what the hell happened? Hey, you're supposed to protect me." They're going to say, "Well, we weren't able to." That's what's happened in the Gulf. The United States provided to protect him, to back him up, and couldn't do it.
What about the effect on the dollar? Because, of course, this can turn heads. A lot of Arab nations, if they were really genuinely looking after the interests of their own sovereign sovereignty and their own people, they would start turning to the likes of China and perhaps Russia and say, well, can you help us? Because if America isn't able to protect us, have you seen that? Any signs of that happening? Is that something that might be a scenario? Or do you think they might even tilt to Iran eventually and say, well, let's do a deal with you guys?
Well, Pakistan reportedly is working behind the scenes with Egypt, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Iran, to create what would be called a pan-Islamic military force to secure the region.
Wow.
Now there are a couple of wild cards in there, right? Sisi in Egypt has been getting paid off by Israel, so he's been making money under the table. Erdogan himself, he controls the oil to Israel, and yet he's been accepting insult after insult by the Israelis. We're talking about they're going to attack him next. And instead of him, telling Israel to go fuck off and shut down the oil,
yes,
he continues to supply it. So you've got that as a weakness. In Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, boy, he's like a weather vane in a hurricane. Depends on the day who he's supporting.
Right.
But so the only one with a clear vision about what their interests are, what they're going to do, is Iran, and they're not wavering from that. If anything, the events of the last week were an estimated 40 million Iranians came to the streets to mourn the passing of the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. That's close to 50% of the entire population, and the reason the other people live in different, Iran's a big country, so people couldn't just abandon all those other parts of the country and go to whether it was Mashhad for the last one or Qom or Tehran. There were really only 3 cities that were visited in Iran during that time. So, but you get 40 million people estimated between those 3 cities is pretty remarkable.
Coming to the end of the show, really last question. The de-dollarization process was a big deal prior to this war being kicked off. Do you see that the de-dollarization process being accelerated and in a way China being the big winner without even firing a shot? If the conclusion of all this is that the dollar goes down and trust in America goes down and the global economy goes down, do you think China's the biggest winner of all, potentially?
Yeah, well, look, let's call it the post-World War II economic and political order. The political side, the United Nations, International Court of Justice. You've had then on the economic side, the whole Bretton Woods system replaced by the petrodollar, but the dollar as supreme with IMF and World Bank backing it up. That's coming to an end, and the death of it started with the Russia's attack on Ukraine following the repeated provocations from the West. Then the West attempt to impose crippling economic sanctions on Russia, forgetting that Russia was the number one resource provider in the world. It had all the natural. It could build a wall around itself. It'd never have to trade another damn thing with any country. It could live by itself. And so, in fact, turns out the world was dependent on many of the products that Russia exported: oil, gas, nitrogen, fertilizer, uranium, processed uranium. So out of that, you brought China and Russia together in this quest to create a new global financial order around BRICS. And, one of the first things when Russia was cut off from SWIFT, which is the system the banks use to wire money between them, it's basically an email system.
Right.
That led the Chinese to embark on creating an alternative called CIPS,
right,
the cross-border interbank payment system. That's digital. The SWIFT system is analog, and analog systems can take, at least a day, sometimes 3 days or more, particularly if the email gets lost in spam. Whereas the Chinese CIPS system is digital; it's real time. Boom, it happens immediately. So you've got a growing number of countries doing that. You got more and more countries selling off their U.S. treasuries. They're not buying more treasuries. They're buying gold, and they're buying Chinese bonds increasingly. So the whole face of the international economic order is starting to change. U.S. is desperately trying to stay in control, but it does not have the economic foundation to do so. And so it's going to continue to erode power and wealth as these conflicts continue.
And before that kind of demise, if you like, happens, are we going to see death in the millions? Do you think bigger scale war is going to break out, or will the Americans abort their mission to sort of tame Iran before that happens, do you think?
You know, the last World War saw an estimated, the numbers I've seen, between 55 million and 70 million dead. Horrific numbers. The two countries that suffered 70% of those deaths were China and Russia. So neither country has an appetite for experiencing that again. It's the West that was largely immune. The United States only lost fewer than 470,000 soldiers, sailors, Marine, airmen dead. And that was in both theaters, both in the Pacific theater, the European theater, included North Africa. And at least of that 470,000, about 130,000 died from traffic accidents, illness. They weren't killed in combat. So the United States really has never tasted the bitterness of that kind of war. Whereas Russia lost 27 million, China estimate around 30 million, horrific numbers. And that's why both countries have been adamant about trying to find peaceful solutions as opposed to military solutions, but they also know that they can't sit back and wait to be attacked. So this is, we're witnessing, I believe right now, the death throes of the U.S. Hegemonic empire. And as it goes, Europe goes. Europe's 600 years of colonial oppression, dead.
Well, Larry C. Johnson, it's been a fantastic interview and covered vast ground, and certainly I opened my eyes on several issues. I could have gone into depth on any number of them, but I wanted an overview, and you've given me a fantastic one. Thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you, Larry? Do you have any particular place where we can direct people to?
Sure. My main blog, sonar21.com. I also have a Substack, Larry C. Johnson.
Okay.
Substack.com. I have two YouTube channels. I do an individual one, Countercurrents. Usually it's just my commentary, but occasional interview. Those will post 2 short videos a week, so it's not a major endeavor. Then Pepe Escobar and I are partners on a site called Transition Protocol, and we try that the videos come out. I do an interview with Dr. Z. We call him Dr. Z, Zulfikar Ali, Pakistani American, and then Pepe is interviewed on Tuesday. Then Pepe and I do a joint appearance usually on Wednesday. There are Vijay Prasad, Alex Craner are also appearing on the channel. So it's
brilliant.
not just
a great lineup. Alex has been on this show. Vijay was in the studio only 2-3 days ago, and Pepe's promised me somewhere in mid-July. But he could be anywhere in the world. I don't know where he is.
Yeah, he's the ultimate cosmopolitan man.
He's a but you're welcome on this channel anytime, any place. And I will plug Transition Protocol as a point, but we'll probably put up your other channels as well if we get the links afterwards. But thank you so much for your time. I know you're busy with so many interviews, etc., and we really appreciate it. Thank you for your insight, and thank you for watching this edition of Deep Dive Perspective. Larry's laid it on the line. I think that there's nothing clearer here. The citizens of the world, and particularly citizens of the West, are being duped, it seems, because this is a war which cannot be a victory for the people of the West, certainly, and definitely not the rest of the world either, if it goes all the way. How do we bring these sort of leaders into line? say we've got democracies, but it seems that oligarchies are actually running the show, and we get very little say. Who asked for this war on Iran? I'm not sure that the British, American, or Western public asked for this war. Yet we've had laws just implemented today. National security law here in Britain means that the Home Secretary can literally label anybody who speaks up vaguely like they're supporting Iran in any way, and give them nice long sentences. This is the democracy that we're in. This is where our freedom of speech is heading. And it's only because of the brave voices of people like Larry Johnson and Pepe and others that alternative media is providing some reality, whereas legacy media has wilted and is doing the bidding of most of these fake news, state issued decrees, which basically brainwash us into thinking that Iran is the enemy, and then it's Lebanon that's the enemy. And in reality, it turns out most of these people are just fighting for their sovereignty and independence and for their own families. I think we should do a deeper dive. Do follow Larry on all the channels he's pointed out, and like, share, subscribe to DDP, because we're going to continue bringing these great guys to give you the real story. Thank you very much for watching this edition. Goodbye.